All right, we are back up again. Sorry for that. We're having some technical difficulties. I am still trying to get this all dialed in. This is a new camera. I actually got numerous new cameras here. And this was not bought for streaming. It just turns out this is pretty decent for streaming here. And I think that might have just been that the battery died. Seems possible. One of the things is when you do a streaming setup, you have to actually get like a permanent power plug that goes into the battery slot of your camera. And the old camera I was using had the little plug in, and this new camera, however, does not. It's just running off battery. So I think it's quite possible that the battery just died. And but it also means that we might be on a limited time here until the battery dies again. However, it's also possible that if all it is the battery dying, I can just replace the batteries as we go, right? That might be just all I need to do for now. However, seems possible that it's some other technical difficulty. Really not sure at the moment. Just gonna have to play it by ear, unfortunately. But I appreciate you all tuning back in again. See, people are starting to show up. We're going to get the new link, tell people about the new link, see how they feel about it. I mean, I'm glad it failed early rather than, you know, waiting all that time. So let's see here. I'm just going to not open programs. Oof. I mean, I'll open this one maybe. Yeah. Yeah, see, I'm over here just trying to start the live stream and things be happening, you know? Trying to do the thing. Sorry for this rough start, everybody. All right, we're giving this a go. Giving it a go. Telling everybody about it. The new one, we're doing it. All right. We're doing the thing. Doing the thing, everybody. Here's to hoping that this battery lasts a little while. Also, here's to hoping that maybe when it dies, I can just replace the battery. So what I was going to say about the new setup before everything failed is that, so I made a deal with Means TV. Essentially, I reached out to Means TV and I asked them if they would be willing to invest some money in the channel and help me buy 2 much nicer cameras to use for a 2-camera setup so that the channel could start doing something maybe a little bit more experimental than just the simple talk to the camera videos. I want to do interviews. I want to be able to film out and about. And they said that they were down with that. And they gave me $2,000 to buy a 2-camera setup. I bought 2 Panasonic GH5s. And in exchange, I'm making 3 exclusive videos for Means TV. The first one is going to be about Occupy Wall Street. The second one is going to be about Chaz Chop. And the third one, I think I'm pretty decided, is going to be about Stop Cop City. So I'm going to do 3 exclusive videos that are just going to go on Means TV. I'm going to try to make them really like high quality, maybe kind of documentarian style. And if you just want to like get ready for that ahead of time, go over to Means TV, use my affiliate code Anark and you'll get a discount. And also by using my affiliate code, I will get some proceed of the money that you're paying to Means TV. I also get just some conversion of the total profits of the company. So when you go over to Means TV and you become a subscriber there, you are helping me have another revenue stream, number one, but also you are allowing us some autonomy as a movement away from YouTube in a place that's actually like a feasible alternative. At the moment, it's not, but it might grow into one if we are to nurture it. So there's a lot of reasons to go over to Means TV and, subscribe to Means TV. And you get a little bit more of a discount if you do a yearly package. Also, another thing I should mention, managing a more complex production setup means that I have had to find somebody who's going to help me do the filming. So this is the first time that I've really like brought somebody onto the channel in like a full-time way. This is the first time the channel has like a really kind of enduring collaborator. It's a close friend of mine here in town. She knows a ton about cameras, and she has already been an enormous asset to the channel. But the reason I bring that part up is just because in order to make it worthwhile, I don't want to bring somebody in and just have it be purely volunteer work. So I'm giving her a part of the money that comes in through the channel. However, to do that, I've had to make sacrifices to my own income. So I just want you all to be aware that, I was kind of in a subsistence, income there, but now I'm having to cut back my income. So I would really appreciate everybody's support in trying to kind of get me back perhaps to a subsistence level, because I was pretty short on money this month. And I've had to cut back on my gig work as well in order to make more time for the YouTube channel and also for all of my organizing work here in town. So if you're trying to fund me doing my work here on the YouTube channel, and you're trying to also fund me developing revolutionary praxis in real life like Cooperation Tulsa and all of that, then please go over to my Patreon and become a patron for any amount. That is how I make the majority of my income. Obviously, as well, if you just want to donate here in stream, I appreciate any amount of money that anybody can spare. I think that's about it. Danny says, what's your gig work? I guess now I can say, because I haven't been doing it as much, I was a tutor. I was a private tutor. I'd drive around to people's houses and teach their kids whatever. So yeah, I hope everything's still going. Somebody said they got a brief pause, but I think we're good. Looking at myself, I definitely don't think I'm color graded properly here in the stream, but I think it's because of the background. The background is kind of doing, it's because of the way I look by contrast. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah. The link for Means TV is just means.tv. And then when you sign up, you can use my affiliate code, which is Anark, ANARK. Also, I think it might just be down there in the video description. Yeah, it's down there in the video description. If you just use the link down there in the video description, it'll take you straight there and fill in the affiliate code and all that stuff. So yeah, I hope everybody's doing well. The world is positively on fire. Just terrible things happening back to back, it seems like. I think one of the most notable things one of the most notable bad things that has happened recently is that in Kansas, they are telling a bunch of trans people who have had their gender changed on their IDs that their IDs are no longer valid and that they just need to send their IDs into the state, and that they basically just nullified every trans person's ID in the entire state of Kansas, and that there's no grace period. It happened instantaneously when they passed the legislation. That is so overtly attempting to marginalize trans people, clearly to put them in vulnerable positions to allow genocide to take place. Now, I don't know if we're in a stage of active genocide, but it certainly feels like this is one of those sort of lead-ups to an anti-trans form of I don't want to use too strong of a word because I don't want to get people too scared, but extermination or, just trying to put them into like ICE camps or something, trying to find that justification. I mean, we're in a society now where papers, please has become the norm, and, trans person gets pulled over for any reason. They don't have an ID now. And then they have to divulge. The reason I don't have an ID is because I'm a trans person. The Kansas state legislature actually just nullified my ID. And I really don't want to imagine how ICE agents might possibly abuse that, especially given that the ICE agents are just our Gestapo. So yeah, really fucking terrifying stuff. It's quite clear to me that it was purposeful and purposefully trying to illegalize and marginalize trans people in the process. Because there's no grace period. if there had been a grace period, I would still say it was. I would still say that was really fucked up. But I would say that maybe it's more like a culture war issue kind of thing. But because they also gave no grace period, I have to believe that this is a way to illegalize trans existence. You know, this isn't just, oh, I changed my gender on a piece of paperwork. This is, I don't have an ID and I can't drive a car now. I can't go to a clinic and give my ID. Anywhere that needs my ID, I no longer have a valid ID instantly. And that requires now also a bunch of trans people have to go and get their genders changed on their IDs, which takes time, which means now they're going to flood into government facilities in order to, it's so obviously targeted as a way to excuse a sort of like trans genocidal perspective, trying to find an excuse to illegalize being trans. It's fucking terrifying, y'all. It's very, very scary. Somebody said the character or the camera looks like when in a video game your character takes in-game drugs. Well, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah. Yeah, really, really terrifying stuff, y'all. I'm very disturbed by that. I think that's one of the most overt forms of early stage genocide that I've seen, and we absolutely must pull together. Like the way that Minnesota pulled together for its people, the whole nation has got to pull together for marginalized people. And right now, it appears as if trans people are on the chopping block. And that means that we all have to show up for that. Like this is not one of those like optional sit back and wait kind of things. This is the, first they came for the socialist type shit. Like we have to do something about this, and people have to, fall in and get militant and really begin to create community defense, because I am terrified to imagine what the next steps of this look like in Kansas. And if you're in Kansas and you're an organizer and you're organizing around this issue right now, I would like for you to reach out to me in DMs, because there are already people in Oklahoma who are beginning to set up responses to this. And so I would very much like to get in contact if you are somebody that is beginning to organize around this in Kansas. So just DM me anywhere you like. Oh, you want to know who my new production assistant is? They're right here in the chat. That's Yami Tsukino. There she is. She's going to be helping me film every single video from now on. She's going to be here on all of my work days, and she's setting up the cameras and all of that. So, yeah, I mean, you're right. I think the white balance is off. I'm going to try to see if I can just put a filter on that fixes this. Let's see. Color correction might work. We'll do color correction. Then we will try to, no white balance option. What would that be in? Image mask blend? No, I don't want to adjust the camera right now. I don't want to mess with the camera. I will say that you're absolutely right, though. It seems like it's 100%. Is it gamma? No. Yep. Not going to mess with it too much. It seems like, what's this? Effect filters. There should be one here. Gain, no. Invert polarity limiter. No, that's going to work. All right. Get rid of that. Boom, 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 boom. All right. I'll mess with the white balance another time. For now, I'm just going to look ultra pale. Little more pale than I actually am. I mean, to be fair, I'm very pale, so not too far off. Yeah, Yami Tsukino, she's been doing a wonderful job. I appreciate you so much. It went from me like having to, it would take me like 2 hours for every hour of recording to like more like just a little bit longer. We recorded like a 30-minute video in 45 minutes. We just blasted right through it. So definitely appreciate having her on for the videos. So yeah, that's one of the terrifying things that's happening. Also terrifying that we are, posturing like we are going to attack Iran. And unfortunately, it does not appear to just be more posturing. Trump is ordering enormous amounts of military hardware over into Western Europe, which looks like that means that it's going to be used as a staging ground for possible operations. Pretty terrifying to imagine, especially as somebody who grew up during the war in Iraq era, and saw how badly that all turned out. I am not looking forward to the United States entering into another quagmire with a much, much more capable enemy. And I really have zero trust that Trump is not going to do something ludicrously irresponsible. There was how there's it's sometimes people post on 4chan saying I'm an insider and I kind of know the thing. Well, one of them was saying that the Trump administration was considering the use of small scale nuclear weapons. Now, the rest of the things that was in that post didn't really come to be. One of the predictions they made was that it was going to happen 3 days from then, and it is more than 3 days since then. So maybe they were making shit up, as people on 4chan do. But I really would not put it past this administration. It's really just not beyond something that they would do. However, it would absolutely hasten the decline of the American empire. It would not benefit us in the long run. It would probably destabilize the entire world hegemony even further. It would probably lead to World War III. And I'm very doubtful that if everybody just teamed up on the United States, that the United States would actually lose World War III. I don't think that's what would happen. That they would win World War III. I don't think the United States would win World War III if everybody teamed up on the United States. And the United States is losing allies by the minute. Trump has been alienating a bunch of allies in NATO. He's creating his own new coalition, which is just what does he call it? The Board for Peace or something. We'll find out. But yeah, and then at the same time, they're mass deleting files from the Epstein disclosures. They keep giving us files and then they delete ones which are implicating them, which says to me that they didn't really thoroughly check over them before the releases. That's why that they were frantically trying to get us to not want the releases, is because they were terrified of us doing the releases because they hadn't looked through them thoroughly. And so now after the releases, people are finding stuff. And when people find stuff, then they go through and remove the incriminating things that people have already found. But that is idiotic. That's a really bad way to do it, because then everybody already found it. You crowdsourced sourcing through the Epstein files, and then, the crowd found the stuff and now it's too late. It doesn't matter if you remove it. It exists. People have already got it. People downloaded your entire database already. So there's no taking that back. All it is Streisand effect. Now it's going to bring more attention to it. So, yep. Somebody said, a few people are like, what would World War III look like? Or what would winning World War III mean in a nuclear age? Yeah, that's the thing, is if somebody begins using nuclear weapons, we all just lose and the whole world order becomes destabilized. I do not believe that Trump could use even a single nuclear weapon without creating World War III and without prompting large-scale military operations against the United States. So I think that, but here's the thing, I say that, and that's the logic of why they haven't been used in previous operations, but in previous engagements by the United States. But Trump appears to have no understanding of what actually needs to be done, or what he can and cannot do. He doesn't really believe in any limits on himself. He's like a grandiose narcissist who believes that he is the greatest and he can do anything he wants, and then clean up his mess afterwards. So I really would not put it past him to do something as foolish as using a nuclear weapon. However, I will say that he is not, suicidal. He doesn't want to destroy his own power, but he's so stupid. He's not, I think he's below average intelligence probably. I don't think he understands what the run-on effects of doing that would look like. And so we would hope that his advisors would tell him that's a really bad idea. However, he's also surrounded himself by sycophants. So, just the title of the stream, let's talk about the world burning. There's some preface to the stream about the world burning. Oh, also Palestine, the genocide in Palestine has continued. They say there was a ceasefire, but they basically just kept up afterwards. Now they're just finishing up the process. This stuff's happening. We are like in a pre-World War I or pre-World War II kind of global condition, in my opinion. And that means that the people, the masses, have got to step up. Like this is the time. This is a historic moment. Like the people have to find their spirit of heroism, their willingness to self-sacrifice for a cause that is greater than themselves. That is the moment that we are at. And there is, I believe, that sort of heroic spirit within the American people. And we saw it in Minnesota. We saw it with the woman setting fire to the ICE facility. We've seen people rebelling, and it has to be something that happens everywhere. That has to just become the norm. It has to be where everywhere where they try to expand the fascist apparatus inside the United States domestically, it is infeasible that that they hemorrhage money and resources and people, that it's utterly infeasible. We make it impossible for them to dominate us because the repercussions for them dominating us are too great. That has to become the norm. And that's not only for us, that's for the rest of the planet. Okay, not just for the other people and the other nations of people living across the planet for which our imperialism is crushing them, but also the planet itself, the ecology on the planet. Everything relies upon the heroic spirit of the American people, the willingness to self-sacrifice for a cause that's greater than themselves. And I'm glad to say that is pulling people into left coalitions, but we've got to do the work of going to the people, of radicalizing the masses, of meeting them where they're at, and building bodies by which everyone can co-manage a revolutionary process together. We have to build assemblies. We have to build organizations. We have to create dual power. We have to do the things that I've been talking about on this channel ever since the beginning of this channel, but we got to do it harder than we've ever done before. People got to push themselves way outside their comfort zones. You got to do things that are scary to you, because here's the thing. We're not living in a world where you can retreat to a non-scary place. There's not a non-scary place to retreat to anymore. Okay? The terror of the world has permeated into every part of our lives. The only thing that is left for us is to stop what is happening. That's it. I'm reading this book by Luke Kemp called Goliath's Curse. And the book is about the history of the rise of the state and the fall and dissolution of great empires. And let me tell you something. We have this stereotype that after the fall of the great empire, after the fall of these enormous imperial authoritarian structures, that what comes afterwards is chaos and devastation and sickness and all of this. His scholarship, having studied hundreds of examples, suggests the opposite. Living in imperialism is worse. Living inside of the imperial core, it is worse than living in the collapsed empire. After the empire has collapsed, quality of life goes up. Okay? Lots of people think that if you're in the imperial core, you're being bribed all the time. This is like one of the premises of third worldism. Oh, we're being bribed all the time. We're the labor aristocracy. We've got it so good. That's not what his study shows. His studies show that actually living in the belly of the beast is deeply distressing. You are being dominated all the time. You are terrified by your government. You are constantly under threat of violence. You are constantly being coerced into doing everything. And as it gains more and more power over you, it needs to appease you less and less. It needs less and less propaganda to pretend that the nation is great and the people are great and that you deserve better things. Eventually it says, I've got so much power over you. I don't even have to pretend that I give a shit about you as a populace. You are utterly under my thumb. I have complete and utter domination over you. So I don't need to give you social programs. I'm going to tax you as much as I want. No, your wages are never going to move. It's all going to be distraction from here on out. I'm going to bring your attention over here while I fucking kill your uncle and your cousin and the person that you saw off the street is in a concentration camp, and you're not going to do shit about it. That's what it's like actually living inside the belly of the beast. It's not all fucking luxury. You think we all live in mansions? We don't all live in fucking mansions. The people who do the best in the belly of the beast are the rich and the powerful. And Luke Kemp's studies actually show that for the masses of people, the fall of the empire benefits them. That life is better after the tyrannous structure that they had been occupying for all that time, after it collapses. Collapse is beneficial to the masses. Like this idea that, oh, there's all these huge power vacuums and all of that. Like, yeah, there is. But the power vacuum generally does not get filled with a greater tyrant. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's certainly examples of that. But like, the truth is that we are not better off now than if the United States were to decline from world hegemon. For the United States to be brought down as the world hegemon, this is not just us doing a favor to the other nations of the world. This is not just, a revolutionary solidarity. We're not just walking ourselves into a meat grinder. This is going to be also beneficial to the American people. They have lied to us to convince us that we are being, lavished with all of this luxury here in the United States, when in fact you can compare us to an enormous number of other countries on this planet that have it far, far better than we do. Okay. And those are not hegemons. Okay. Norway and Sweden and all of that. We know all of those examples, but the examples are adding up, y'all. Okay. The number of places where your money goes further, that list is getting longer and longer and longer. Those places also have access to all kinds of amenities. They also have access to all kinds of products. They have lied to us that the only way that all of that gets maintained is by us being in this imperial dominator that goes around essentially destroying the planet and destroying any sort of human habitability. It's a lie. Okay. So also, I just want to suggest that means that it is in your self-interest to work against this. And we need to get rid of this whole, guilt complex that everybody has about living in the United States, constantly trying to prostrate themselves before the rest of the world. You need to do it, not just for everyone else. You need to do it for yourself. And the masses of the United States need to do it for themselves. Because living under this form of domination is utterly, utterly devastating. It's degrading. It's utterly degrading to the human spirit. All of us know it. All of us know it. Only those who are utterly delusional believe otherwise. We're constantly watched. Our wages have been stagnant for decades. We have no health care. We're sick all the time. We are atomized. We're constantly being pitted against one another. So we're alienated. We're lonely. Of course, suicide rates are high. Of course, people are devastated and depressed. Living in this nation isn't fun. Living in this nation isn't good. Living in the United States actually sucks. And here's the thing. I just want to say, it's also not going to be a solution to run. Okay? Going elsewhere, if the United States is not brought down, what's in the United States, it's coming to you. Wherever you are. What's happening here, what we're experiencing, it's coming to you. If the United States gets what it wants across the across the planet, all of you are going to be experiencing precisely what we are experiencing here in the United States. So to those of you who are here, don't run. Like, I'm not saying like, there may not be some rational, like, you're being hunted by the law, you need to get away kind of thing. I understand. But like, insofar as that you are here and you have the capability to struggle, you need to stay and struggle, because this cannot spread to the planet. We must rediscover our revolutionary solidarity. We have to get our fucking priorities in order. And we have to create something that is going to, at the minimum, stymie the expansion of this machine, both here and abroad. We need to create a resistance that is going to drain it of resources, that is going to make it obsolete, an alternative that is better at doing the things that it is trying to do. We have to build it from the bottom up. We have to construct a dual power that is capable of supplanting the state and corporations in the United States. And if they flee, if the corporations flee to other places and we get capital flight, fantastic. All the better. That's what we need, y'all. This is the position we're in, okay? This is the position we're in. Yep. Anyway, that was a long rant there, but that's where I'm at, y'all. That's where my head is at. I get how a lot of people kind of feel doomer right now. I understand, like this moment feels very hopeless, I'm sure, but here's the way I look at it. If you were the Epstein class and you are creating a vast propaganda campaign, okay, because that's what we found out they did and probably are still doing. Imagine you're the Epstein class and you're hiring trolls online to go around spreading your narrative in every single echo chamber so that echo chamber gets diverted toward your interests. Do you think you would spread a message of hope? Of course not. You don't want everybody completely demotivated. You want everybody to believe there's no way to fight back. You don't want everybody to believe the government is too strong. Okay? You don't want everybody to be hopeless. Doomerism is a handout to the Epstein class. It is what allows them to maintain their power over us. They need us to feel demotivated and like there's no hope and no way out, because that's precisely the conditions where we are not going to rebel. Okay? So, I mean, if for nothing else, you need to maintain your hope and your revolutionary fervor out of spite of these pieces of shit who are running essentially what is a global sex trafficking cabal and influence peddling campaign to control all of the states of the planet. Like, that is what they want. They want you to be beaten down. They want you to be depressed. They want you to be doomer. They want you to be hopeless. They want you not to build a real alternative to the state of existence. That's what they want. So, I mean, even if you feel those emotions, I'm not saying don't feel the emotions, because that's like, it's healthy to feel the emotions, but don't let them control your actions. This is part of why I keep pushing people back towards stoicism. Stoicism doesn't mean not feeling your emotions. It means not letting your emotions make decisions for you. Let those emotions inform you. Maybe you make decisions that are in alignment with your emotions, but your emotions can't be making the decisions. You can feel that hopelessness and that doomer and that depressed, but then act anyway to build the structures that are going to perpetuate into the future and possibly offer a real resistance to the system as it stands. You know, like, what's that old saying, the old native saying? It's like, societies grow great when old men plant trees under which they will never sit. Well, I think that in our situation, young people are also going to have to plant trees under which they will never sit, because I don't know what the hell is going to happen here in the near future, but I think everybody needs to recognize that we are building something for future generations. The heroic task that is before us is a task that is not just for our benefit, that even though I've laid out the many ways which it is in our benefit, but for the benefit of all of the people that will come after us and all of the species of the planet, the ecology of the planet, for thousands, tens of thousands, maybe millions of years to come. You know, do y'all know how long it takes for the carbon cycle to get back into whack? Like, once you screw it up, it can take like hundreds of thousands, even millions of years for it to get back in order. So just understand what the weight, what the stakes are, what the stakes are for the struggle at hand. yeah, hopefully y'all understand what I'm getting at here. So, got a donation from SNSOD letters for $5. I appreciate you. They said, Anark, what do you think about the claim from anti-anarchists that anarchists support U.S. imperialism? It's absurd. They're just making things up. There's no actual reason to believe that. They're saying that because you don't support their side in the imperialist war. Okay. They want you to side with a different imperialist, and then they like to pretend that their side isn't an imperialist. So this is just fucking utterly simplistic, like brain rot, essentially. Imperialist brain rot is what it is. The anarchists don't support U.S. imperialism. There is no examples of anarchists supporting U.S. imperialism. What they mean by that is just, you don't support my side in the imperialist war. They just want you to side with a bunch of villainous state capitalist states like China or Russia or whatever. You know, their coalition of capitalist states is better than this coalition of capitalist states. They don't want you to have any ethical perspective. They don't want you to have a revolutionary perspective. They want your entire worldview to be about liberal geopolitics, essentially. They just want everything to be about the war of states. And by doing so, they've essentially abandoned being revolutionary leftists. They no longer have a revolutionary leftist perspective. Now all they are is people engaged in imperialist geopolitics. So this is a desperate ploy on their behalf. They have zero ground to stand on. They support other imperialist states. The only true anti-imperialism that there is anti-statism. The only true anti-imperialism that there is horizontalism. That is what prevents imperialism from rising to begin with. If you have states, you will have imperialism. Wherever a state is, that state will try to become an empire over time if it is able. Every state that is not imperialist has just failed at being imperialist. There is no such thing as a benevolent state. There is no such thing as a worker state. That is a fucking fantasy. And everybody peddling it to you is just distracting you from the tasks at hand, which is to marshal the masses toward revolutionary action. That action has nothing to do with the state other than that it must abolish the state. Anything short of the abolition of the state has no revolutionary value in the modern era, insofar as we're talking about actually doing the transformation that is needed. Doing the transformation is needed requires a movement which is gradually degrading and dismantling the state. That is the only anti-imperialist movement which can exist. There is no such thing as statist anti-imperialism. Got another message, got another donation from Matzal for $5. They said, you talk about ecology, but what about democratic confederalism as being a main tool for dual power when combating people who are market socialist? So democratic confederalism, especially as it's laid out in Democratic Confederalism by Öcalan, is phenomenal. And it basically, honestly, just sounds like a form of anarchism, some form of horizontal confederated structure by which local councils make decisions which bear on their locality and federate together into larger and larger scales to make decisions about those scales. Okay, so if that is persuasive to somebody, especially if that name Democratic Confederalism is more appealing to them than anarchism, which probably is the case in a lot of occasions, go for it. Like, use whatever words are going to convey to people your ideas. And democratic confederalism is certainly one of those phrases. Danny asks, could you do a video about democratic confederalism? I might. It's possible. Lori says, Anark, this is not a doomer moment. Capital has never been weaker. The state is the weakest it's ever been in our lives. We are more powerful than we've ever been. The new world is this close. Love it. Yes. Yeah, back to while I was doing my first rant about people needing to stay and confront the revolutionary moment, somebody also pointed out some of us can't run even if we wanted to as well. That's another reason why people need to stand up and confront the system as it is you're doing it for all of those who can't get away, for all of those who can't escape. Okay? Like, if you're imagining, for example, you want to keep trans people safe here in the United States, well, guess what? If you're from Kansas, as a trans person, you literally can't leave the nation now. They just devalidated your ID. You're going to try to go to an airport, you're trying to get a ticket, you don't have an ID. You do not have a valid ID. You can no longer leave the nation as a trans person if you're in Kansas. Okay. So now all of those people, all those trans people in Kansas have to rush to get new IDs. And guess what? In the meantime, all of them are stuck here. Anywhere they need to go where they need an ID, they can't use their ID. There was no grace period. It is not running time, y'all. This is not running time. This is not time to lay down and take it. This is time to stand the fuck up and push back. That is where we're at right now. Y'all, they're trying to boil us like frogs, okay? They're trying to turn the heat up little by little by little. They're trying to desensitize us to what they're doing, and we cannot allow that to take place. Absolutely not. We have to go to the people and we have to marshal them into a revolutionary structure. We have to construct the bodies, the organizations, which are going to be able to do the job of creating those alternatives and giving people an actual avenue to enact their skills and to demonstrate their revolutionary values in practice. Okay? It has never been more important in the history of the United States than right now. I think I also just want to emphasize to everybody that, like, the Epstein disclosures, okay, just in an objective sense, if you compare that to every scandal in human history, I can't think of a bigger scandal in human history than what is in the Epstein disclosures. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm thinking back through all of, like, the worst scandals that I've ever learned about. Like, it is beyond anything we have ever learned about how states work and the collaboration of the most powerful people. Like, all of the most absurd conspiracy theories, or not all of them, I don't want to go that far, but like the sorts of conspiracy theories we would have all been dismissing just a few years ago are not literally true, but something very much like them is true. You understand, there is a transnational cabal which is purposely trying to control every world government through blackmail and coercion, and is killing those operatives in the governments which do not do what they want. It is essentially a coup of a sort of collusion of the criminal underworld and intelligence agencies across the planet. And they have essentially created a shadow government that gets its way through sheer domination of those in positions of power within corporations and the state. It's like it's hierarchical power taken to its utmost. It is a perfect demonstration of everything I've said about hierarchical power structures in my work. Like, their domination is their entire modus operandi. It's like all about, force, threat of violence, and deception. I mean, think about it. Deception is like at the core of what they're doing. That's what hierarchical power is predicated on. Hierarchical power structures absolutely 1,000,000% must be destroyed and never, ever allowed to rise again. We must create something that spans the entire planet, that maintains the horizontality of the masses, and that the masses can come together and build structures and maintain structures which will maintain the horizontality of the masses. Because wherever hierarchy rises, what we are witnessing, this is its culmination. This is what it will always always, always become. There is no way to ever make a hierarchical power structure that will not eventually in time trend towards what we are witnessing. This is, of all times in all of history that we have had the impetus to carry out an anarchist revolution, we are witnessing it. This is it. This is it. Don't wait. There's no more waiting. There's no more perfect conditions to wait for. Everybody's always talking about the material conditions, material conditions. These are the material conditions. We're there. We're there. And no more excuses. No more excuses to not act. No more, oh, I have to do X, Y, Z. Oh, this is, that sounds uncomfortable. Oh, and stop. No more excuses. Everybody must act. Everybody must go find the place they can plug into the movement and begin acting. It's so insanely crucial at this moment. Yeah, as somebody said, the perfect conditions are here. The perfect conditions are here. No more waiting. KD11 says, oh, well, it just says symbolic. Symbolic, any zines that can be given to help explain to people the purpose of a march and explain how to incorporate other tactics for social change. I would recommend my essay, Constructing the Revolution. It fits in a zine if you just want to go print it off of Anarchist Library. And another essay, which is longer, you're not going to be able to print it off as easily. And that's the Black Flag Catalyst Revolt Guide. So that one has a lot of information about how to just do protests, but also how they can escalate. And then if somebody really becomes interested in all of the theory behind it and how an actual long-term revolutionary strategy looks, then I recommend my work, A Modern Anarchism, specifically Part 3. Part 3. This is where that strategy is laid out. And if you're interested in how to build organizations in a way where they actually work and might actually get something done and they maintain horizontality, you should read Part 4 called Organization. If you want to understand, you want people to understand the reason why everything sucks so bad, they should read Part 1. And if you want them to understand the alternative and what could be and why it's actually backed up by, for example, complex systems analysis, they could read Part 2. So just saying, those are some recommendations. But we're going to have to do a lot more than just marches. So we have to make dual power structures. We have to create alternatives to the state. Yeah, somebody said this makes like the Catholic Church cover-ups look like nothing. This makes Watergate looks like child's play. I've never heard of a scandal that is on the level of what's in the Epstein disclosures, y'all. It's beyond. It's like it's a fever dream. It's a fever dream of what anarchists think the world could be working like, but none of us would have ever claimed it because it would have seemed too absurd. But it's not. This is the outcome of hierarchical power structures if they are not utterly destroyed and countervailed. They cannot be allowed to take root. Wherever hierarchical power takes root, you are inevitably developing, on a long enough timeline, another Epstein cabal. Ibrahim says, pardon me, are you reading the YouTube comments? Sometimes. I mean, I'm like, talking and then looking over, seeing what's going on. But I don't, obviously not reading everything in the chat. Crazy Cool says, the deep state is real and it's just the hierarchy that anarchists have been talking about forever. Yeah, absolutely. Like that one that's, the deep state is one where I was never doubtful that existed. To me, that wasn't even a conspiracy. It was a fact. Like you can literally just point to a bunch of people who are long-term employees of the state. And many of them are in positions like the intelligence apparatus and domestic suppression. So like that's just a fact. I mean, people who denied the deep state were real are just delusional or naive. Like, that was always the case. And I said as much for a long time, but I never would have argued that a transnational pedophile sex trafficking cabal was calling the shots with many of the most important decision makers in many of the most powerful states on the planet. Mocha Kopi, thank you for reminding me. So I had been holding off announcement. I'll probably just make a formal video at some point, but A Modern Anarchism, these books you see behind me, these are being compiled into one single volume by PM Press, which is a pretty decent sized radical leftist press. They are going to be taking A Modern Anarchism, putting it all in one book, and that is going to be released later this year, sometime in the winter. The pre-orders, however, are available, so I'm going to get the link for that real quick. There we go. So I just want to tell everybody that, you know, it's obviously a very beneficial for me for you to go and do the pre-orders. The pre-orders show PM Press what kind of interest, what kind of passion that this book might have. It shows them what kind of pull I have with my audience. It probably could also persuade them to do a bigger marketing campaign. The more people show that they're interested in the pre-order, the more money they're probably willing to put into doing a more elaborate marketing campaign for A Modern Anarchism. So those pre-orders absolutely matter. Also, the cover is awesome. Like, click through. Like, it's a really good cover. I'm very pleased about it. I've been wanting to get published my whole life, and I was always like, oh man, I hope I don't get published and the cover sucks. The cover doesn't suck. The cover doesn't suck, you know, and obviously these covers don't suck. I was a big fan of what Seditionist Media did with those pamphlets. However, I love the cover that PM Press worked up for A Modern Anarchism. So somebody asked, like, what's actually going to be added into the fuller volume? So I have made some changes. One is obvious. It refers to itself as a book with parts and not a video essay. But that's trivial. So what I've done, for those who actually watched it very closely, you might recall in part 3 is where I lay out what I call the 4 fields of power structures. And those are individual conditioning, interpersonality, social structures, and environmental structures. Well, it occurred to me, like, while I was writing part 3, I really wish that I had brought that up in part 1. So what I did is I took that description, the introduction of those 4 fields, and I put that in part 1. So now up front, the reader will be introduced to the 4 fields of power structures well before part 3. So that happens in like the opening section even. That is one thing. I made some edits where I introduce a lot of the figures that I talk about. Like, you know, in the original essay, I would be like, Bakunin said, and instead of being like, Mikhail Bakunin, who was an anarchist in the late 1800s, seen as the foundation of social anarchism, like, I did that part, right? So I added a bunch of those, like, people, like the introductions to authors. But the more major stuff, biggest things that I did, part 1 now includes a description about how anarchism is fundamentally socialist or is at minimum about mass control of the means of production. In part 3, I elaborate on that revolutionary roadmap. That was one of the things that it hurt the most for me to sacrifice. When I was writing part 3, I really wanted to go into more detail about all of those parts of the revolutionary roadmap. And I also wanted to correct some things afterwards. I remember kind of looking back and being like, well, that was mostly correct, but I wouldn't have said it that way. Or I would like to add a little more nuance to this. Or things like that. So I went through and I really filled out that revolutionary roadmap in a lot more. It's much prettier. Also in part 2, I took out all of the diagrams. Lots of people were like, I don't know what these diagrams mean, Daniel. They kind of distract from the work. I took out all of the diagrams that had to do with, like, you know, the intersections of all of the 5 principles that I laid out. So I took out all the diagrams. And, I redid the revolutionary roadmap. It's so much prettier now. I did a way better job on it. And I think that's all the major stuff that I did. That's all the major stuff that I did. There's a bunch of minor things, you know, just like I improved the citation. There's more citation now. I could do more citation. I just didn't have time. So yeah. That's the kind of stuff that's in it. And yeah, no, I think it's totally worth ordering this version, even if you have previous versions. It's not just a perfect copy by any means. I think it's a better version of the text. So yeah. Yeah, somebody says, love the cover. It looks like a 70s book cover. Yeah, what I told them as part of the creative design, because they were like, what's the direction you're wanting to go here? And I was like, well, my channel utilizes a lot of like mixing modern design with retro aesthetics. So like y'all might notice I use a lot of kind of like VHS glitch looking stuff. A lot of the time I try to make things look like they're like ink on parchment. You know, I really like these sort of like tactile, things that we don't get as much in this very crisp, you know, like pristine video era. So I like to work a lot of that in there. I like, you know, as those of you who watch my channel know what I'm saying. So I told her that, and that I got this this great cover out of it. They did a really good job, and it has that sort of tactile, you know, feel to it. I think they did a phenomenal job. Our Brain Hurts a Lot says, is it shipping internationally? Now, so PM Press has versions of itself all over the place, but the other arms of PM Press haven't put it all up yet. So if you aren't in the United States and you want to wait for like it to have a UK release or a broader Europe release or whatever, those world markets will be serviced better as time goes on. So I would say just wait for that if that's what you're gonna, if you're living elsewhere. But if you're living anywhere in, like, you know, North America, then the one that you've got is the one you should use. RJ Kilroy says, if the Epstein cabal already held all the cards, then why did they release the files? They don't. That's not how it works, right? It's not literally that they call all the shots. That's not how it works. But they are constantly intervening in everything that's happening. They're constantly putting their thumb on the scale of all of the decisions that are made. They're constantly inserting themselves in positions where they can accumulate power. They're constantly undermining people who are opponents to their program. That's what's really happening. But I think that, truthfully, the Epstein cabal didn't want the files to be released. That's why Trump and the whole Trump administration tried to prevent them from being released. And that's why also I believe they weren't released beforehand, because they absolutely did not want them to be released. And in fact, I do think one of the mysteries I've questioned is, how did it end up happening? How did it actually end up happening? I think one of the only possible answers is just that Trump's base was fracturing. And it still is. Trump's base is fracturing into pieces. I'll tell you that as somebody living in Oklahoma. I don't see MAGA signs anymore. Nobody wears fucking red caps at this point. Like, I rarely, extremely rarely even see a fucking MAGA bumper sticker. That means those motherfuckers razored those stickers off of their bumpers, okay? So, like, his base has been fracturing. And I think it's quite possible what they were hoping to do was just blow us out with so many files there's no way we could dig through it, which that was a bad idea because people absolutely can dig through it and have been. I think that one thing I will say is this: my working hypothesis is they released to us the least damning portion. That wasn't the most damning portion, y'all. That was the least damning portion. What they haven't released is worse. What they haven't released is a bunch of files that they have gone through and have determined, oh, these absolutely cannot get out. So I think we actually got a trove of files that they thought were not that big of a deal by comparison to how bad it really is. Just think about that. Think about what we've already got from the files. That isn't that bad by comparison to what they actually still have. We've got, like, I think somebody estimated like 5% of the total files. Imagine what's in the 95%. What's in the 95% is what they're withholding. It must be astoundingly, stupendously evil. I mean, my mind is boggled to imagine, because that must be the case. It's the only logical explanation. Yeah, as somebody said, the child predation part was what they thought was the least damning. Yeah, no, I think what we'll find is that it goes so far beyond that. So far beyond that. Somebody says evil is real and it's structural. Exactly. Yeah, the Trump Communist Acorn says the Trump administration forgot that half of young people are fucking unemployed right now through this shitty economy. So we have the time to look through the files. Absolutely, yes. Booty Broth says Chomsky taking the craziest L of all time is pretty funny. For me, it wasn't funny. It was very disappointing. I mean, I get what you're saying. I'm not trying to call you out, but like, it was definitely bad. He looks worse. The more came out, the worse it looked. I already kind of talked about this on a previous live stream, so I'm not going to spend all my time talking about it, but absolutely it looked bad for Chomsky. I have no intention of recommending anything by Chomsky from now on. I think that utterly tarnished his legacy. And I might say that I don't think wrongfully so. His legacy deserves to have that, that damage done to it. He does not deserve to be remembered without that. There was plenty of good reason to believe that all of the accusations against Epstein were real. Chomsky had no reason to believe they were false. There was no reason why he should have believed that, especially not somebody who has studied that much about how the elites actually function. He never should have possibly gotten duped. Ludicrously disappointing. Camilo says ad hominem. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could see it that way. It certainly, I don't mean to say that his work is like literally meaningless. I'm not saying that his work that he didn't have a bunch of good stuff. Manufacturing Consent is still really good, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't deserve to have his legacy tarnished by his really pretty close relationship to Jeffrey Epstein. Not like a daily talking incident, but certainly friendly, very friendly. Tomas says Chomsky is too old to come back from this ish. No doubt. No, absolutely. I think that's one of the other things. He really can't defend himself. I don't think he has any good way to defend himself, to be deadly honest. I don't think there is a good defense of it. The only defense is an apology. And so far, it's not what we're getting. Mokokopi says he has damaged anarchism with his weird relationship with the Dems and definitely watered down rhetoric. Yeah, he had already damaged anarchism with that shit. The unjustified hierarchy shit, that was already not good. That was the thing that I most criticized about Chomsky beforehand. But after, and his relation, like, once again, there's no evidence Chomsky ever went on the Lolita Express, went to the island, any of that. There's no evidence of any of that happening. But the fact that somebody who was so knowledgeable about how hierarchical power damaged society still, or could get that close. I mean, I'll just tell you, I am not like a perfect human being. I've made mistakes in my life, but I guarantee you I would never get close to Jeffrey Epstein. And if I had any like inkling of the stuff that Chomsky would have known about Epstein, I never would have gotten close to Epstein. Now, don't get me wrong. I probably wouldn't have tried to piss him off. Like, obviously, dude's just going around killing people, but I would have distanced myself immediately. I wouldn't have responded to dude's fucking emails. I would have ghosted him. I would have tried to get off his radar ASAP. I would try to get him to just forget about me. You know, like that's what my approach would have been. Like, Chomsky did not have to do anything that he did. It was not necessary at all. Yeah, and then a bunch of fucking authoritarian leftists tried to use this to promote authoritarian leftism, and Michael Parenti and all that fucking tanky nonsense. Yeah, yep, not good, not good. Yeah, Booty Broth says being friends with Epstein doesn't happen by accident. Yeah, I mean, exactly. And the thing is like, I know that Epstein approached Chomsky and he gave Chomsky, probably like he did with a lot of other intellectuals, he probably gave him the feeling like, oh, you're so important that I've been paying attention to your work kind of shit, right? And apparently the first thing is they just sat down and had dinner. Now, if that's all it had been, they just sat down and had dinner and then Chomsky never talked with him again, I would have said, okay, Chomsky just got tricked, right? He just got tricked. But no, it's not what it is. It's not what happened. So yeah, I have no intention of defending Chomsky. Maybe some of you might, but I don't recommend it, to be deadly honest. I think that, you know, I used to defend Chomsky. I used to, but I don't anymore. And honestly, I'd already stopped defending Chomsky even just like 2 or 3 years ago. Like, I had already come off that, mostly just for the unjustified hierarchy stuff. Like, that was the thing for me. The Bosnian genocide denial, unfortunately, was like somewhat common among left academics at the time. So I didn't think it was good. It's very bad. Absolutely. But I was like, that was just a mistake kind of thing, right? I was like, that was a mistake. The unjustified hierarchies thing, however, was very damaging to the popular conception of anarchism. And I do believe it enabled a bunch of anarchists to become authoritarian leftists, because then all authoritarian leftists had to say was, well, yeah, our vanguard is a justified hierarchy, right? Like, it was just like a fucking giveaway to all of our enemies. It created pipelines out of anarchism, unfortunately. Yeah, I just want to emphasize, don't defend Chomsky. Like, y'all just call him out. Like, he doesn't deserve it. It's like, especially given the fucking in the email when he tried to play down Me Too as being like hysterical women and all this shit. Like, that's fucked up. That's not good. It demonstrates something bad about his character. As Wallach says, we follow ideas, not men. That's precisely correct. Arthur Kaufman says, why do you think anarchism is losing the propaganda war against Marxism, Leninism, and democratic socialism? Because they are closer to society as it stands. I think that's a big part of it. So last time I was asked this question, that became like a reel and everything. I said that it's because of hierarchical realism, because people think that hierarchy is eternal, that it is the default state of all social structures and so on. And that's certainly part of it. But also Marxism, Leninism is basically just social democracy, to be honest. It's an insurrection to put social democracy in place, which, yeah, social democracy sounds super cool, but like, how many people in a first world capitalist nation are going to do a revolution to put social democracy in place? Not many, but enough that there is a constituency of them that divert people's energies into wasteful, dead-end vanguards that will never achieve anything. And then as far as like social democracy or democratic socialism, I think that one is mostly, it is just the social democratic impulse, but without the insurrectionary vibe, right? So like when you're in a capitalist nation, social democracy appears as a rational improvement upon your circumstances. And so you kind of got two options about how you're going to get it. You're either going to get it through insurrection and building a vanguard that's going to try to overturn everything, or you're going to get it through electoralism. You do parliamentarian or parliamentary tactics, right? So it's natural when people haven't been fully radicalized, that they don't have like a really social revolutionary perspective, that they're first going to make a stop at like Marxist Leninism and democratic socialism. Those are definitely like rational first stops because they're really similar to capitalism. You know, quote unquote, Marxism, Leninism really just puts in place what I would call state capitalism, which often just devolves into regular capitalism and at best turns into social democracy. But they have no examples of socialism. They have never achieved worker ownership of the means of production. They have never achieved decommodification. They've never achieved the abolition of the wage relation. They have no successes as far as actual revolutionary change out of capitalism goes. All they've ever done is develop capitalism. That's the only example of their praxis. However, that might look pretty good to you if you're living under this form of capitalism. Like social democracy looks pretty sweet when you live under what we've got, right? So that makes it appealing. That's number one. Number two, the Marxist-Leninists have done an excellent job of presenting themselves as the pragmatists in the room. They're the pure utilitarians. Like you need to just accept that our vanguard rule is good and is going to bring about good things, and then you'll get out of your naive, childish beliefs. But that's delusional and false. Like it's just not backed up by historical evidence. In fact, I was arguing with somebody on Twitter the other day. They were talking about the success of all of the authoritarian leftist methods. I went and looked it up. I found a fucking list on Wikipedia of all of their quote unquote self-claimed quote unquote socialist projects and all their quote unquote self-claimed communist projects. And I researched them, and I literally went and I counted it up. And did the statistics. They have failed 196 of 200 times, y'all. It is a vastly failed ideology, ludicrously failed ideology. Like, it does not have a claim to practicality, okay? It doesn't fucking work. It doesn't work. It usually gets destroyed. But they've done a really good job of deluding everybody into believing that it works super, super well because they point to like 3 examples. Okay. They tried it like 200 times and they failed 196 times. And they're convincing you that because like 5 times something like they survived, that means they're the practical ones. Oh, they've got it all figured out because they fucking rolled the dice and 95% of the time failed. Okay. And that is just pure propaganda. Okay. There's just tons of examples that they can point to, but the vast majority of them got destroyed either by imperialism, capitalist pressure, or internal degradation due due to, honestly, hierarchy producing more and more capitalist incentives internally, or degradation due to ethnic and civil strife. Those systems aren't more stable. They are absolutely lying to people. And it's on us for not calling them the fuck out. People haven't gone and tried to figure out the facts. People haven't studied the history of their projects. And so somehow this fucking movement that is 95% failure rate, even though it's had more attempts than any other method by far, somehow has presented itself as being more practical, more utilitarian, more effective. Utterly false, and we have allowed them to get away with this lie. And don't get me wrong, maybe all of them aren't lying. Maybe they're just, unfortunately, on accident kind of deceiving people. But the fact of the matter is that there is no factuality to Marxism, Leninism being an effective utilitarian praxis. It is, in fact, a deeply failed praxis that has had way, way more attempts than everything else. And because it has had so many attempts, it appears as if it is very effective. It's like, somebody who's like, I'm going to, like your hedges need to be trimmed or something. Okay. And the person who wants to do the hedges the right way, they say, okay, well, it's going to take me a couple days. I've got some plans for how I'm going to keep some things in order. It's going to take a little while. It's a little harder, but I promise your hedges will be better for years to come. And then you got the other person who comes in and is like, I'm going to use pesticides. I'm going to just cut that shit aggressively. It'll be done in a couple hours. And then, you have 1,000 attempts to do it in the way where you use the pesticides and cut it and it'll be done in a few hours. And you have like 3 attempts where somebody wants to be patient enough to try the holistic way that actually works. And then, the holistic way like fails once. Oh, now it looks like it has a 33% failure rate, but then the fucking way that uses pesticides and wants to wreck the hedges essentially tries, gets customers that'll try it 2,000 times and it, fails at a higher rate, 40% or something. And but you know what? Because it's been tried 2,000 times, it has more apparent success, even though it's a worse way of doing things. It doesn't matter. It appears successful because you've had more attempts. So this is the same thing with cooperatives. I've gotten into a bunch of arguments between people who are like capitalists, and I talk to them about workers' cooperatives. Okay, so what they say is like, well, if workers' cooperatives are so damn good, why don't they compete in the market? Why isn't everything workers' cooperatives? Well, at one point I wasn't really sure as to, like how to answer that, you might say. I wasn't sure how to approach that question. Well, I went and I did research, and a woman named Virginia Periton published an academic article where she compared the failure rates of cooperatives, workers' cooperatives, versus corporations, like traditional corporations. And what she found was workers' cooperatives actually had a higher productivity than typical corporations. And they had a higher success rate. That is to say, they survived a little more often. And so you might be saying, well, then why are people presenting cooperatives like there's some weird niche solution? They're more productive and they survive more often. Like, how can that be the case? Because for every one cooperative, this is not an exact number right here, by the way, but like for every one cooperative, there's like 100 corporations that get started. Okay. So then it looks like workers' cooperatives don't work. No, workers' cooperatives work perfectly fine. There's just less of them being created. There's a lower birth rate. And I argue that's the exact same thing when it comes to horizontal revolution. There's just a lower birth rate of horizontal revolutions. They work better. They make faster progress towards socialism. There are examples, by contrast to what I said earlier, there are examples of horizontal revolutions getting abolition of wage labor. That did happen from time to time. For example, in the countryside in the Spanish Civil War. We do have examples of decommodification. Once again, the Spanish countrysides in the Spanish Civil War, but also in the Zapatistas. They've decommodified the land, for example. Worker ownership of the means of production is the norm in horizontal revolutionary projects. And that should, one would think, be excellent evidence that the horizontal revolutionary method is a superior revolutionary method. But unfortunately, because Marxism-Leninism tried 100 times as many times, they're like tiny handful of survivals appears as if it's evidence for their success. So that's the answer to your question, in my opinion. Zahiril Adzim says, how many anarchist countries are there in the world right now? Let's hear it. That's the thing, is you are trying to compare what an anarchist considers success with what an authoritarian considers success. What an authoritarian leftist considers a success is creating a capitalist state. Okay. So obviously, if you want to create a capitalist state, there's tons of examples of creating a capitalist state. Authoritarian leftism is super good at that, super good at creating capitalism and painting it red. But what anarchists, or horizontalists, I guess you would say, believe is a success is when the people are empowered. Okay. So we have different metrics. I actually want revolution. Authoritarian leftists just want red capitalism. So obviously, if all you want is red capitalism, that's a lot easier. I don't know why you're calling yourself a revolutionary. I don't know why you claim to care about socialism or communism if that's the case. But that's all you've got to your name, capitalism. You have made zero progress towards the revolutionary goal. The workers are not empowered. The workers are domineered by state apparatus and, over time, corporations as well. Anyway, got a donation for $100 or 100 Mexican dollars from Our Brain Hurts a Lot. They say, I've come to the conclusion that the only obstacle of anarchism is the problem of defense. Outside of that, anarchism always ends up creating sustainable societies that people actually want to live in. I think that's a pretty good assessment. One thing I'll say here is that one of the failures of many anarchist projects is they are not prepared with the concept in mind that they are going to have to engage in a militant conflict at some point. So that's why I'm always advocating, you might notice, that we have to develop community defense structures. People have to learn how to use a gun. People have to learn how to do medic work. People have to learn how to do intelligence and all of that. Okay. That's all part of the process, you might notice, when I bring this up or when I write an essay. Well, one thing I've also noticed is that the anarchist or horizontalist projects that seem to fare the best are ones that have a history of a warrior culture. So, you know, we look at the Black Army in Ukraine back in the, during the Russian Civil War. They had a strong warrior culture. Okay. I always forget what the name of their horseman tribe was, but that was very present in the revolution in Ukraine. You know, if you look at Rojava, they have a strong warrior culture. Like in these examples, or CNT-FAI, they had a strong warrior culture. People had guns well before the revolution got started. This seems to be a necessity to the success of a horizontalist movement. You have to develop your defensive militant capacities from scratch, from the beginning, and you have to have an acceptance of a militant culture. And I mean militant, not just like radical revolutionary, but like the ability to do violence, like knowing how to use guns, knowing how to like physically hurt somebody. Like, these are necessary components. The Iroquois Confederation is another great example. So the Iroquois Confederation was like 7 native tribes in the northeast of the what is now called the United States before colonialism, right? And these tribes were very horizontal, and they had a confederation that was also very horizontal. But those were warring tribes. Those were aggressive, militant tribes. Those tribes had the capacity to do violence, and they had a strong warrior culture. And the more research that I've done, the more I've realized that a warrior culture is imperative for an anarchist revolution to succeed. Because if that culture instead has sort of a more pacifistic orientation, if it has like this sort of, yeah, one day, but we're going to do it the right way by slowly building within the structure. If it's only prefiguration with no understanding that there will come a warlike orientation, then the time will eventually come where a war breaks out or a conflict breaks out and the state crushes the horizontal movement. The horizontal movement must develop its own capacities for defense, its own capacities to do violence from scratch. And I know that doesn't sound very fun, and I know that a lot of people that's going to be a big turnoff, but unfortunately it's crucially necessary. And our movements have to figure out a way to develop a warrior culture that is not toxic, that is in fact liberatory and heroic. So I would agree that an issue of defense is certainly part of it, but I think what I've presented there is hopefully the solution. Also, Long Defiant has now been a member for over 2 years. He says, thanks for all you're doing. Very excited about the book and Means TV. Solidarity. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. And also for any of you that are watching, I just want to remind you, if you want to support the channel, please go over to my Patreon and become a Patreon or patron for any amount. That is my primary source of income. So when you go over there and you become a patron, you are contributing to my ability, directly to do the channel and also to be an active organizer in my community. And if you want to learn more about the work that I'm doing in my community, you should go over and watch the video that's called Hope is in Action, which is sort of a review of what we did in 2025. But I won't even pretend, definitely need money. I just took on somebody who's going to help me do production management, and I'm now paying her a portion of my total income. So that is, that brings me a little bit below subsistence. So if you want to help me get back to subsistence, please go over to my Patreon and become a patron for any amount. That's patreon.com/Anark. I'll put the link in the chat. Y'all know how it goes. Revolataria says, thank you for existing. You're a fierce inspiration to our music. Hell yeah, that's awesome. Super glad to hear that. Yeah, so that's one way you can contribute. The reason I originally brought it up is because Long Defiant is also basically like a YouTube patron, you might say. So on YouTube, you can also become a patron through the member system. You go down below and then where subscribe is, if you're already subscribed, I think it says join. Well, if you click that, it's basically like an integrated YouTube Patreon. So, yeah, that's I think that's the spiel. Oh, you can also go to Means TV. As I was telling people earlier in the stream, Means TV actually gave me money in order to expand my production. You may notice that this looks really pretty, right? On stream right now, everything's looking real crispy and there's nice background separation and all that. That's because I got 2 new cameras. And that's because Means TV gave me money in order to expand my production. And in exchange, I'm going to be creating 3 videos for them. The first one's going to be about Occupy, or these are 3 exclusive videos. The first one's about Occupy Wall Street. The second one is going to be about Chaz Chop. And the third one is probably going to be about Stop Cop City. And those are going to be exclusive on Means TV. So if you just want to go over to Means TV right now and become a subscriber to Means TV, then you'll see them all when they get released. But yeah, no, I mean, I'll be pitching that more and more as we get closer to the release of those different videos. Yeah, those are the ways you can help the channel. Somebody says very pink. Yeah, we need to adjust the white balance. It's also because the background is fluctuating, and so my skin looks different as it fluctuates. I look right now. I look very pale, still very pale, and then I think as we get closer to see, now we're getting different tones. I'm starting to get some color in my skin a little bit. Ah, yes. See, now I look normal, basically. I mean, still very pale, but yeah, we got to adjust the settings on the camera, but this is my first time streaming with this really fancy camera. Yep. Other person says material conditions says that Rojava is essentially a decentralized government. The Zapatistas are closer to anarchism, but anarchism is a social movement developed in the 19th century Europe. Zapatistas are born out of original Zapatismo, which was a form of agrarian libertarian socialism. Yeah, I basically agree with that assessment. Yami says, unfortunately, I'm not there right now. Apologies, everyone. You don't have to apologize. I definitely could have screwed with the white balance before I did this. But yeah, so anyway, things are happening. I'll probably be here for roughly another hour. So also got, another, oh, let me go find it real quick. Boop, boop, boop. Void Star PTR just became a backer of the channel. I appreciate you enormously. That's the highest tier that somebody can join on. So that will absolutely help me survive. I appreciate you. Got a $5 donation from Arthur Kaufman, who just said, left, right, left, right, left, right. I think that, I mean, that's the symbols. That's the symbols are, right? I suppose. Or shaking your head. I don't know. You got me with that one. But I appreciate you. Very much appreciated. Knowledge and Defense says, Anark, what do you think about the leftcom critique against alliances with not just Stalinists, but social democratic open reformists too? That it's inevitable poison that sooner or later kills you. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, you don't want to do it in a structural sense, okay? So you don't want to structurally embed yourself with the social democrats. But I think that like cooperating in the social movement is just natural. That's just gonna happen. And it's not a bad thing. They can offer a bunch of like really valuable resources. They're often down for the cause, even if they're not down for your methods. And I think that that can be very helpful in that sense. However, just like with the authoritarian leftists, you don't want to build structures of cooperation. You want your political organization, your home organization, to be a ideologically consistent organization, not a big tent. I think that's a big part of what Especifismo teaches us. Your home organization is a political organization where you have strong theoretical, strategic, and tactical unity, but all of your radicals are involved in the social movement, and in the social movement, we don't like make those kinds of demands of others. We don't tell the movement, oh, you have to look like this in order for us to support you. We don't tell the movement, like, let us tell you what to do. We don't tell the movement, you have to agree with us on everything or we won't cooperate. No, Especifismo tells us, no, we have to be present regardless of whether the person already agrees with us. The movement, the social movement, will always be a big tent. Our job is to become involved, to demonstrate the effectiveness of horizontal methods, and to help those organizations within the social movement become more powerful, more autonomous, so that they as they develop horizontality and they develop their power as horizontal organizations, we have more allies in the struggle, and then we can together federate. And if they don't develop horizontally, we still might produce help for the organization if they are engaged in a meaningful way in spearheading the social movement, but we would not join the hierarchical organizations. We would instead assist the social movement in every capacity that is available to us. So that is my perspective. It's just the line I take from Especifismo. Scotty Too Hottie says, no anarchist society has ever increased its size to encompass an entire country. It's never happened. Marxist-Leninism, on the other hand, here's the thing. What do you mean by a country? A country is not a size. There are countries that are tiny. You know what the population of Luxembourg is? Let's see, with the population of Luxembourg, let's go take a look what the population of Luxembourg is. What is that? 680,000 to 690,000? That's smaller than Rojava. That's smaller than in the Spanish Civil War. Well, so is that a country? Is that the size of a country or not? Is millions? So if we have millions of people and a region as well, larger than Luxembourg, have we not expanded to the size of a country? Or what you really mean is anarchists didn't create a state. So think about that. Why would anarchists create a state? No, we are trying to create power for the people. We're not trying to expand to millions of people and then give power to a bunch of government functionaries, which is all that Marxism-Leninism does. So what you just said is nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. What anarchists want to do is create regions of horizontality which expand and expand and expand. And sometimes those regions do reach the size of entire nations. However, what you really mean is that you think anarchists should be creating states for some reason, but that's nonsensical. Absolutely nonsensical. Doesn't even make sense. It's like going to somebody who draws in graphite and being like, well, you're not really successful because you've never painted. It's like, yeah, I'm a graphite artist. I'm not trying to paint. Doesn't make any sense. Elemental Elder says, as a specifist, should we advocate excluding exploiter class people from mass movements? No, and we can't. Like, that's just not going to work. You can't do it. What you should do is you should exclude them from your political organization, right? So we're not going to be having any people who are in the exploiter class in Cooperation Tulsa, for example, but they're going to be in the movement. That's just how it works. Like, you don't get to choose who's in the movement. You work with the movement as it is. So like, good luck not having anybody who rents any properties, no landlords, no business owners, getting them out of the movement. Not going to work. The movement is not ideologically anarchist. Anarchists are within the movement. Anarchist ideology operates within the movement. So you absolutely not only shouldn't do so, but you are literally incapable of doing so, not because of any problem with you, because that's just not a thing. You can't exclude them from the movement. You can only exclude them from your political organization, which I would advocate doing. Sam donated $5. He says, wait, I've been away for a couple of months. Did something happen? You on the list or nah? I mean, bro, you got to know I'm on all kinds of lists. But you'll have to clarify exactly what you mean. I'm alive. They haven't assassinated me yet. Or sorry, they haven't forced me to commit suicide yet. Scotty Too Hottie, to be precise, anarchist Catalonia never expanded to encompass Spain entirely. It doesn't have to have a state. Why does it matter if it encompasses Spain entirely? Why is that relevant? So like, if an anarchist movement started in Luxembourg and it took over all of Luxembourg, would that be a bigger success than them taking over a larger region with more people in Spain? Why does it matter? Why are you so obsessed with what states think about you? Why are you like aping to get legitimacy from state structures? Why do the national boundaries of a country define your success as a movement? I thought that the workers had no nation. Why do you care so much about national boundaries? I thought that the whole point was we were trying to create worker power. My focus is on creating worker power. I don't give a shit if the worker power specifically claims the boundaries of the given nation. I care about how much success, how much movement towards the goal have they made. So this is just a very arbitrary requirement, which demonstrates a lack of understanding of how a horizontal revolutionary method actually works. Scotty Too Hottie says, this is an important point. The bigger it gets, the stronger it gets. Emphasis on the get stronger. Yeah, well, I just addressed that. The size is the thing, not whether it encompasses the national boundaries. Like, would you really expect any movement, say in the United States, to have success by completely claiming the entire North American continent. Like, United States is massive. This seems to me like a lack of understanding of material conditions. And like what you're doing is judging the success of the movement based on how it encompasses or doesn't encompass pre-established national boundaries, which really doesn't make any sense. The size, absolutely. Size is very important when it comes to a revolutionary movement. Why do we care about if that size corresponds directly to the boundaries of the nation? That's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. Kavasman says, is Means TV an even worker competitor to Nebula? Because I've heard of the refusal to sign Indigenous Americans. I don't know what that would refer to. Means TV is a workers cooperative. I don't know if you're saying that Nebula doesn't want to sign Native Indigenous Americans, or if you Means TV. If you want to give me an example, then I'll keep that in mind, but I don't quite know what you're saying there. Goober Damas gives $10. He says, keep up the great work and thanks for bringing me to anarchism. Thoughts on Farge's concentric circle model? Reading Social Anarchism and Organization, and full members seem to have more decision-making power than general members. Yeah, that's understandable. The concentric model, I would say, is the best way to understand it from a horizontal perspective is that this is a grouping of commitment. How long have you committed to the organization? How much have you demonstrated your militancy? Those people are the ones that get brought into the more foundational decision-making meetings. And then the circle outside of that are involved in numerous like congresses where the discussions that were had in the middle circle get taken to the congresses, and the congresses then enter into feedback with those, and they amend them and change them. So it's more like a circle that is determined by your demonstration of long-term commitment and militancy. That's not to say that I don't think that there might not be a hierarchy taking place there, and that may not be a rational criticism of especifismo. However, I do think that it differs from more traditional hierarchical power structures in a variety of ways. Another way it differs is that in more traditional hierarchical power structures, let's say you have like 3 slots, you're voting in treasurer and, et cetera. You get the idea, like the board executive and the co-executive. It's like rigid and structured. 3 people do it in a traditional structure. In a specifismo, that middle circle can have as many people as have demonstrated their commitment. So that circle is not limited in number. It can be, if the whole organization demonstrated their commitment, the whole organization would be in the middle circle. Also, the pressure of the organization is to move people from outside circles to inside circles. So like in a vanguard, in a Marxist-Leninist organization, the idea isn't that you're trying to move people into leadership. You're trying to move people into followers. You're trying to, only a few people end up in leadership, and the rest of everybody just listens and gets to give a little bit of feedback. There's like, a small number, 3 people. And the idea is not that you're trying to, the pressure is not to move people into leadership. The pressure is to move most people into followers in the vanguard, and a couple people are then leaders. In a specifist concentric circles model, the pressure is to move everyone into the middle circle. So it desires to democratize the organization, but it prioritizes who is making decisions about long-term strategic objectives to people who have been present long-term. So that may or may not be a valid, for you, that may not ring as a valid defense, or it may. For me, we don't really, we don't institute the concentric models as rigorously as they do in Farge. And in fact, what I've read is that most of specifist organizations do not implement the concentric circles model as rigidly as Farge has done. So just understand that there's a bunch of specifist organizations that are utilizing broader specifist theory and organizational ethos, but they are not instituting that particular feature from Farge. So yeah, we got 129 people. I think that's the most I've had in a stream. Doing pretty good. People are showing up. I feel like I've been rambling nonstop this stream. Oh, what the hell? Sorry, I'm trying to send somebody a message. All right. Sorry, coordinating what I'm going to do after I get off stream. Yeah, my mood seems to be good. Yeah, I'm in a good mood. I'm in a good mood today. I got good sleep. I feel very awake. I feel very sharp. Oh, Puddleglum, I'm super glad you reminded me about the Sacramento talk. That now that the pre-orders are available, we should definitely get on that. We need to wait a little bit into March, but then absolutely, we will get the exact day scheduled as soon as possible. I'll try to, if you want to resurrect our old group message, go ahead. And because all the things that were preventing me from coming beforehand, we're pretty much good now. We just have to schedule in the gaps there. Cool. Moko Kopi says, what are your opinions on libertarian left comms? I mean, I've had so many in real life. I get along really well with council communists. Online, I don't know why, but there's a lot of council communists that seem like they just want to insult anarchists all the time. But in person, I've just not found that. In person, they're super chill. Or rather, the ones I've met have been super chill. I work with one woman named Clara Mate, and she's a council communist. And she's been wonderful. She's extremely committed. She's very much committed to horizontalism as well. She just comes to that horizontalist perspective more from a Marxist lens, and we get along very, very well. We work very well together, and we've been collaborating on this project called the Forum for Real Economic Emancipation here in Tulsa. And y'all should go over and subscribe to their YouTube if you haven't already. I'll get the link for you here. Give me just a second. But yeah, no, they do like lectures from an anti-capitalist perspective. Clara is also a writer, so she's written numerous really good books. Let's see. Okay, cool. Got the link. Boom. There it is. Yeah, go subscribe to Free Forum. They're growing way faster than Anark is growing as a channel. They're blowing up super fast. It was only created in like the last year, and they're already at like, what is it? Let me see, like 24,000. That's so fast, incredibly fast growth. So they're doing super well. Go over and subscribe and watch the lectures that we do, and watch Clara's podcast interviews. They're all excellent. Oh yeah, I guess I didn't really talk about the fact that the channel reached 40K. So when I first started doing this, for me, 40K was a marker. Like, I was a viewer beforehand, obviously. And for me, a channel that was at 40K, that was kind of the minimum for me to think like, oh, that's like a really like truly medium-sized YouTube channel. Right? I think that you're like a large YouTube channel around like the 200K and up. You're like, that's a pretty big. You're a large YouTube channel at that point, right? So like getting to the 40K marker has been a goal ever since I created this YouTube channel. And it was really exciting getting to 40K, and I definitely celebrated it last night. And yeah, I mean, I sat there, I recorded the number turning over to 40K yesterday evening. So somebody said medium size is 40K to 900,000. I don't know about that, but yeah. Oh my God. I keep fluctuating around 40K. I was at 39 last night, then I got a subscriber, then I lost a subscriber, then I was at 40,004 like when I started the stream, and now I'm back to 40,000 again. But anyway, you know, it's always moving upwards overall. So y'all, that's so funny that y'all were like watching the stream and you weren't subscribed. I didn't even know that people would be watching the live stream who weren't subscribed. If you're watching the live stream, please go over and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That would be fantastic. Somebody said the sub lost is made by accounts being deleted. Yeah, I believe it. I believe it. John Doe says, I'm curious, is your hatred for MML so strong that if you found out someone you were hypothetically married to was an ML, you would divorce them? No, but also that's a pretty weird story. Okay, like, how would I marry somebody who I didn't already know their political perspective? Like, that's not how my life works. I find out people's political perspective super early in the process of us dating. Like, it's so much a part of my life that it just comes up very fast what my perspectives are. I'm already kind of getting there. I'm trying to understand where they come from. Like, what do they think the necessity of social transformation is? How do they think it might happen? And then personally, I'm very patient with wherever they are. You know, I've dated girls who are liberals. I've dated girls who are more like social democrats. I've dated girls who are also anarchists. I've dated girls who were like, you know, recently had been more of authoritarian leftists, but then they were kind of moving more towards a horizontalist perspective. I've never dated someone who was an authoritarian leftist. And the real reason is because I don't really know if that would be very conducive to our relationship. I think that we would have large differences of opinion about how things could go, and it would probably lead to a lot of tension. We'd probably end up in arguments when it came to the subject, and politics is too central to my life for us to be having arguments like the arguments between anarchists and Marxist-Leninists. I don't think that would probably be very conducive to a good relationship. And I should say that you know, there were disagreements with partners I had that were liberals, and those were also not conducive to a good relationship. Not to say that it's not possible to make that work, but I probably would not want to pursue that relationship in a long-term sense, or I would not see them as much of a romantic partner because of it. Theome 05 they say, what is your opinion on co-housing? Is it important to the horizontal revolution? It's not necessary, but it probably will always be part of the process. You know, I think that like co-housing very much can have like a revolutionary thrust, insofar as that it allows people to escape housing precarity, but I don't think that it's like crucial, that is to say. After revolution, I bet there will be a lot more co-housing, a ton more, because people will actually have control over the housing. And it seems very likely that a lot more people would be willing to live together when they didn't have landlords controlling their entire life. So. McCade Underfuck or Mackay Dunderfuck says, do you think there is substance in any Marxist theory, i.e. Lenin's what is to be done? I don't think, insofar as that the answer is yes, what is to be done is not the answer that I would say yes for. What is to be done is not very impressive. State and Revolution, I think that Lenin was surprisingly very libertarian socialist at various points within State and Revolution. And I agree with him on a lot of the points that he makes. I just disagree with him in the places where he advocates for authoritarian centralization and vanguard approaches. But a lot of his analysis in State and Revolution is pretty on insofar as like a libertarian socialist perspective, like a very kind of a dual power idea. And I also agree with a lot of his analysis in Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism. I don't agree with his overall thesis, which is to say that imperialism is only capitalistic, and that if socialism does it, it's not imperialism. Or I just think that's kind of nonsensical and strains the use of the word imperialism. It's like imperialism predates capitalism, bro. This is a pretty bad argument here. But I agree with parts of his assessment about how, for example, the expansion of finance capital leads naturally to capitalism doing imperialism. That seems true. But like those things to me are a relatively small percentage of Lenin's thought by comparison to the number of places I disagree with him. Okay, or we'll take Mao, for example. Where do I agree with Mao? Well, I think Mao was genuinely more pro-peasantry than Lenin and Stalin had been. They basically saw the peasantry as having no inherent class consciousness and as having, as not being a revolutionary subject. Well, Mao fixed that, and I agree more with Mao. I don't agree with Mao, every single part of Mao. Mao said that the peasants are like a blank paper, basically a blank slate. Disagree with that. But I do agree with him that they are revolutionary subjects, and that they are not like beneath the proletarian or something, that they're not inherently reactionary. That's not what's going on. So I agree with Mao on that. I liked that Mao took a brave, stance on experimenting with different sort of bottom-up or decentralized approaches. He did it in the wrong way, and of course, because the state exists, it sabotaged any such attempt. But I like those aspects of Mao. I also, of course, agree with Mao that China and the USSR were state capitalist. So you could find any number of specifics I agree, but if you look at their broader theory and their broader praxis, the disagreements just blow out those agreements. Knowledge and Defense says Mao openly went after any anarchist or anarchist adjacent efforts too. Yeah, and he sabotaged, the whole commune project, not in the Great Leap, but when they had the Cultural Revolution, there was a bunch of communes made, and he basically, along with the party, sabotaged all of the ones that had any bottom-up control and put in place representatives that allowed the state to moderate the demands of the communes. So he did a lot of bad things. You can go watch my series, The State is Counter-Revolutionary, if you want to learn more about Maoist China. But yeah, no, the questioner was asking where I did agree with him, so. Amagi, I think it's just Amagi. Have you watched What is Politics video on communist countries and why the Russian Revolution failed? Yeah, I think I actually did. And those videos were excellent. They actually taught me some things. Like I read like a bunch of books on the Russian Revolution and the Chinese Revolution. And I learned a lot in his videos, and I agreed with all the things I already knew. So Jace Pugh says, where can I buy your book? Well, the pre-orders are open, and I'll put the link here in the chat. Boom, boom. There you go. Please go do a pre-order. Once again, I want to emphasize pre-orders for the book demonstrate to PM Press that this book actually has people who want to buy it. It actually has a crowd who are going to buy it and read it and promote it. That makes them want to invest more into the book, invest more advertising and more marketing resources. It also helps me get published again. If y'all buy a ton of copies of A Modern Anarchism, then when I go to the next publisher, I say, my book sold X copies, which was my first book, the first time I've published with a major publisher. That seemed like a pretty good start. Want to give me another try? Like having a YouTube channel like this is part of what it helps you get published, because the publishers say, oh, he already has an audience. He can advertise his book to his audience, and then it brings his audience in to buy copies of the book. And so y'all going in, pre-ordering and buying copies of A Modern Anarchism helps demonstrate to publishers that actually my audience is useful to them and is a consumer base. So even just selling a few hundred or a few thousand copies of a book is pretty good. So, every single copy that is sold, if any of you are inclined to do so, it makes a difference. And I appreciate all of you. I've dreamed of being published and becoming a published author for my entire life. And so this is a big moment for me. And so if you want to make the moment even bigger, please buy the book. Kuro Inu says, did George Woodcock's Socialism from Below have an influence on any of your work? I've never read it, actually. The one and only Stir says, Anark, are you still considering doing a video on the two state socialist projects, just like your State is Counter-Revolutionary series on state capitalist projects? Very good series, by the way. I am planning on perhaps also turning the State is Counter-Revolutionary into a manuscript, expanding it with more examples, and then trying to get that published. So the answer is possibly yes. Am I planning on putting it on the channel? Maybe. But I have been thinking about taking the manuscript for the State is Counter-Revolutionary and then expanding it and trying to get that published through PM or whoever else. So that's another reason to buy copies of A Modern Anarchism, because that allows me then to go get the State is Counter-Revolutionary published or any of my other works. So Steve McNelly gave $40, 40 Australian dollars. He says 40 for 40. Congratulations. I appreciate you. Appreciate you enormously. So yeah. Somebody said, what is the progress on getting the State is Counter-Revolutionary published? None. I have only begun thinking about doing it. So pretty much the next step is going to be me actually creating a document where I produce a manuscript. I need to reach out. Probably I'd reach out to PM Press again and ask if they're interested in beginning talks about publishing the State is Counter-Revolutionary in an expanded form. And then I would begin asking the questions about okay, what's my word limit? And so on. So it's something that I've been considering, and it seems very likely that it will be the next book I get published. It's just kind of a shoe-in. It's the other most longest work that I've done. Flinner says, Anark, why do you think many liberals and even some leftists blame poor people so much for the MAGA movement? Most people who voted for Trump are 40 plus and middle income. Poor people are less likely to vote. Well, I think there's this perception that there's a bunch of ultra right wing, poor rednecks that love Donald Trump. And I think that there's certainly been times where that was true. I think that he certainly has, that's part of his constituency. But I think that the image of the backwards redneck is a recurring theme in American politics, where the right-wing hick is essentially screwing up all of American politics, and there's this constant propagandistic refrain that the poor redneck is the problem, and the poor redneck is just stupid and fucking everything up for everybody else. And so there's this constant kind of just a smear campaign against poor rural people in red states. states that I think is frankly unfair. I've met lots of rural people in red states, and they're just people. They're just people. Like, yeah, a lot of them vote red more often than they vote blue, but a big part of that is just that that's what they know. That's their family affiliation, and they really haven't been exposed to a lot of other viewpoints. But if you talk with a lot of people in those rural areas who are more red, and you really go through the issues one by one, they'll often kind of surprise you. It's often like these wedge issues that prevent them from being more radicalized. And so I think it's, really terrible the way that we stereotype poor, like white rural Americans. Surely many of them fit the stereotype, as with any stereotype, but there's plenty of them who don't. And I just think that making these sorts of broad statements and these sort of generalized statements about them is very harmful, and it prevents our coalition from growing, and it makes people afraid of their neighbors, makes people afraid of other poor people who should be their natural allies. So, yeah, it's not good. Kurawini says, what's your best bet for a strategy on building solidarity this year? I think it's all about assemblies, yo. It's all about assemblies. Do general assemblies in public places and get everybody to come to them. Build assemblies in neighborhoods and in blocks and apartment buildings. It's all about democratizing everything. I don't know why, but my body just senses that we are in another Occupy era. We are in another era where it's going to be all about democratization. It's going to be all about the masses coming together, and we've got to rediscover solidarity. We have to reject all of these ways that they've split the masses amongst each other. And we're going to have to build broad coalitions. We're going to have to rebuild the social movement. I think that that's what it's all about. It's all about assemblies. Start doing general assemblies, start doing popular assemblies, start doing neighborhood councils, start doing block committees, stop doing tenants unions. Like, that's what it's got to be. Build that council structure from the bottom up, democratize areas, municipalism, democratic municipalism, I guess you would say, build organizations at the city scale, use those organizations in order to create areas for open democratic participation. Oh, Gilgamesh says, when should we start talking theory with newcomers to the movement? Is it ever useful for people who don't show interest? There's probably always a piece of theory you could recommend to anyone that would be perfect for them, but that's often very difficult to figure out what it is. So I would say really what it boils down to before a person has any form of radicalization is you're just trying to convey the concepts to them in those base form. You're trying to, smuggle in the radical ideas in language that seems normal to them. So I think that that's a big part of it. Oh, the light went off behind me. Huh. Oh, Zultharsky says, start or stop tenants unions. Start tenants unions. Sorry if I misspoke. I misspoke like 3 times in that list. Yeah, no, all the things I listed, those are the things that need to be created. I didn't list anything I didn't think was good. Mokokopi says, the complex adaptive systems theory has been very big influence on me academically. Can you give me any book recommendations? Maybe a reading list? I would highly recommend going to part 2 of A Modern Anarchism and just look at the citations, and you'll find numerous pieces that would be a great avenues for you to learn. Sarah Doe says, last question. An AI chatbot once told me during a conversation that the difference between socialism and fascism is that in fascism, the individual serves the collective, in socialism, the reverse. Agree? I That's a huge oversimplification. I don't agree. I think that maybe like that like might be part of the picture, but I don't think at all that is a defining feature of the two. AI, a common AIL, I guess, as the kids would say. I found that AI has a problem with like comparing political theories because it compares political theories from common stances of comparison. So what it does is it looks for texts where people have compared them, and then it essentially kind of regurgitates those positions. So the sort of person who's going to be analyzing socialism and fascism is probably a liberal to be, or I mean, like if they're comparing and contrasting them from like an apparently like outside perspective, they're probably a liberal. And so they're going to give kind of these trite simplifications. The bot is probably not going to be nearly as good at really discerning the key structural and theoretical differences between socialism and fascism. So like, I guess if I'm like getting into the actual reason why I disagree, it's this. And that is, so like they say in fascism, the individual serves the collective. So in socialism, the collective serves the individual. I don't think that's a good way of phrasing what's happening in socialism. In socialism, it's more about all of the individuals coming together as a collective in order to uncover a common interest. So if anything, it's kind of about trying to blur the line between the individual and the collective such that the individual is an active component of the collective and has like a participatory position within the collective such that they can make decisions along with everybody else. What the fuck? Well, that was annoying. What the fuck? Testing, testing. Testing, testing. There we go. Okay, the mic's hooked back up. That was such a weird situation. I think the battery in the camera just died, so give me a sec. I have returned. Here I am. Listen to my beautiful voice. I did it. It was just the battery. Wasn't the CIA. Although it's weird that the light went off in the background. I don't know what that's about. I have returned. Here I am. Oh, so I don't know how much of my rant about the difference between fascism and socialism actually went through, but yeah, it's kind of my perspective. I feel like it kind of ended at a point that did make sense. There we go. Okay. Got it all set up again. What, somebody said, what if they replaced you with Grok? I don't think they could. I don't think it would work. Somebody said, I don't think your audio cut out. Let's see here. I want to just make sure that I'm on the right mic. Yeah. So that loud sound you heard was, for some reason, my mic stand like disconnected from the clamp on the desk. The mic like fell down into my like onto the desk and into my lap. And at the same time, like the exact same time, the camera basically just stopped working. That was very weird timing, to be honest. Very odd. Not sure why that happened. Hey, Murray, sweetie baby. Murray's laying down in front of me right now. I think Murray's like, bro, I think I've about had it with all this loud talking you're doing here. Like, why are you loud talking for so long? Could you like maybe shut up and let me sleep? Hey, sweet baby. How you doing? Murray's blessing you with his tail. How you doing, sweet darling? I love you. All right. He says, I've had my fill of that. Wow, much better lighting from the side, but I look even more pale now. Yeah, the white balance has got to be fixed on this. It's looking crazy. Poor Boy Soul says, is there a reason you don't stream on Twitch? Laziness. I mean, not really. Just, I would have to use like a multi-streaming platform, and I just have not got it set up. I need to go make a Twitch account, number one. But no, I need to. There's no reason not to be honest. I should be streaming on Twitch and on YouTube simultaneously at all times. So. Kvosman says, one of the rare issues white people have to face. Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially me, I am very pale. So like to get the color in my skin, I have to get things adjusted just quite right. So, the Sissy Finn Boy said, and TikTok, I didn't know you could also simultaneously stream to TikTok like that. I actually wasn't familiar with that. Yeah, Yami Tsukino, we do. We need to start dual streaming. Yeah, Twitch as well. And then I guess TikTok. I mean, T Plank 216 sent, one gift membership. Who ended up getting that? Oh, Janarchy. Nice. I appreciate you. That's awesome. Anark 2 seems to be working great. That's funny. Live on TikTok is crazy is what they said. I do not know. I do not know. I don't know if that's a thing or not.
Anark 2 coming soon to a theater near you. Anarchist live streaming. Live streaming, live streaming, live streaming.
Somebody said Anark is looking like a Polish vampire from how pale you are. Oh, damn. That's real, though. That's incredibly real. No doubt about that. Gandhi 2 energy. Holy shit. Wow. Wow. Shockingly Caucasian. I'm going to remember that one. I'm going to remember shockingly Caucasian. Haz al-Din, they say, not the real Haz. Question, how is the role of the collective different in fascism than in socialism? Both ideologies try to appeal to collectivism. Yeah, I was in the middle of trying to explain that when the whole thing fell apart. So I guess I'll return and repeat what I was saying. So the first thing I'll say is that in fascism, the individual is only meant to cultivate themselves in order to serve the prevailing hierarchical power structure. That's the entire point of the individual cultivating themselves. They are meant to become better and better and better so that they can rise through the hierarchical power structure if that's possible for them. And if they can't, they're meant to accept their place, shut the fuck up, and do what they're told. Socialism just means worker ownership of the means of production. So in the occasion we're talking about worker ownership of the means of production, the role of the collective is as collective owners of the means of production. So what that really just adds up to then is just collective decision making, right? It just means that all of the workers are coming together and making decisions about how the means of production will be managed, how the products will be distributed and produced, and all of that. So then those don't really have like a super strong correlation. In socialism, the importance of the collective is just that everybody is collaborating together in order to carry out the purpose of production for need. And so that's why there's not, that's why I don't really agree with the original assessment that like in fascism, the individual is meant to serve the collective, and in socialism, the collective is meant to serve the individual. Because for me, one thing about that I think is the problem is that like, well, which individual? Like the collective is meant to serve the collective in socialism because the collective is making decisions together, and those decisions take into account all of the individual needs. So that means the individual is the beginning and the end of the process. Whereas in fascism, the individual is completely subordinated to the needs of all of the prevailing hierarchical power structures. So I just don't think that the AI did a very good job on that comparison. Orpheus Squared asks, what is the current state of Cooperation Tulsa's anti-ICE praxis? I would say in a general sense, that's probably, even though it's a good question, you probably don't want to ask most organizations that, because in almost any answer to that question probably would be incriminating if ICE really wanted it to be. So that's all I'm going to say. The Only and Onester says, Anark is my sunburned and plagued brother from another mother. I certainly am. When I get hit with sun, I sunburn, then it peels, and then I get one microtone darker and I get new freckles. It's pretty much the whole process. Sorry, I've been missing a ton of comments. This stream, I've just been ranting. I've been ranting so much this stream, I've missed like 90% of the comments probably. Kvass Man says, Anark, what do you think of Bad Mouse? I'm super pleased to hear he's come back around to anarchism. I was really disappointed when I heard that he had moved away. And I'm super glad to have him back making videos again. And his videos have been excellent. Honestly, all these videos he's been making since the pivot back to anarchism have been phenomenal. He's doing a really good job. Somebody said Mexico. Oh, Yami Tsukino says Mexico filter. Yeah, I think a big reason is just because I'm wearing the green shirt. And then the light in the back went off for some reason. I have no idea why it went off. Let me go see if I can just turn it off and on. I only have 10 minutes left, but... I did it! I did it! Somebody asking about the Discord. If you want to get on the Discord, go become a patron for any amount. Even just like $2, get access to the Anark Discord. It's not even the battery though, Yami. It's hooked up through a cord right now. So it just must have got overheated. It went off again. Okay. I don't know what that's about. It's like, must be overheated or something. It's all right. It's only got, 8 minutes left. So. Golden Tangerine says, hey, Anark, I've recently got into studying communism. Could it work if the Vanguard Party was structured democratically? Well, I would argue it really wouldn't be a Vanguard Party if it were structured democratically. In the occasion that you are talking about a Vanguard Party being structured democratically, you're basically just talking about an anarchist catalyst group. And in that case, I'd learn about Especificismo. I recommend learning about social anarchism and organization by Farge. Great place to start. You'll learn a ton about this theory of building, I would say, a democratic, radical organization, kind of like it sounds like you're looking for. But that's not really something you're going to find in authoritarian leftist literature. Democracy is sort of superfluous to the authoritarian left. They pretend they care about it, but in practice, they don't. They care about the power of an enlightened dictatorial figure at the top, and everybody else is just meant to do what they're fucking told. Crunch MS says, imagine an evil mage sent his ghouls to capture villagers based on the color of their skin in an urban setting. What could a mere villager do to sabotage such an operation? I would say what the villagers should do is the villagers should go around in wagons, and they should constantly be monitoring their village and make sure that they know what's happening in the village all the time. They should go around with, weapons, with spears or pitchforks, and they should make sure that they keep an eye on everything that the ghouls were doing and report what the action of the ghouls were to everybody in the places where the ghouls are at in the village. And then if it was found that the ghouls were being too rough or were overstepping their bounds in the village, the villagers should get together and they should kick the ghouls out of the village, in my opinion. That's my personal perspective. Booty Broth says, I've heard that it's fairly common for anarchists to become Maoists. Is this true from your experience? If so, why? I've never met one. I've never met no anarchist I've ever known has become a Maoist. So I don't know how common that really is, but a lot of Maoists claim they were once anarchists. So I suppose it happens sometimes. Or a bunch of them are lying and distorting reality, because a lot of authoritarian leftists like to pretend they knew what anarchism was and that they were committed anarchists when they never really read any anarchist theory and had no idea what any of the base principles of anarchism were. So I'm a little doubtful of that. However, it would kind of make sense because Maoism is probably one of the least authoritarian versions of authoritarian leftism. So maybe that's why, if it is happening. Flinner says, what do you think happens when we're gone? Nothingness, just like before we were born? Exactly. Yeah, what happens after we're gone? What happened before you were gone? I mean, like before you were born, that's exactly what's going to happen after. And it didn't suck, right? You weren't sad about it. It was fine. So what comes after will also be fine. All right. Well, we are here in the last few minutes of the stream. I think I'm about to call it to a close. Once again, just going to remind everybody that I now have a production manager, and she is also getting a cut of my income. So what that means is I'm a little bit below subsistence. So if you want to help me out, go over to my Patreon and become a patron for any amount. That's the way I make the majority of my money. That's how I get by. That's how I take the time to do this channel as much as I do this channel. That's how I get the time to expand production and make new video essays and publish books and also to do organizing work here in Tulsa. So just understand, when you go become a patron, it makes a difference. It makes the biggest difference to me. And if you also want to just become a patron here on YouTube, you can do it through like the join function down below. That's another way of basically being a patron. That way, that's part of how the Yami Tsukino gets her cut. So if you want to give her a little bit of more of a cut, that's another way to give her a cut. And also go over to Means TV, subscribe using my affiliate code, or just use the link that's down in the description. I get a little bit of a cut of your recurring subscription every time you do that. Means TV is a worker cooperative. It's essentially socialist Netflix, and it's managed as a workers cooperative. So it's definitely worth trying to support. But also, last thing, don't forget to go pre-order A Modern Anarchism. I'm so excited that it is finally up, and the cover looks super freaking cool. Every time one of y'all go and do a pre-order, it tells the company, this is worth your time. Publish more anarchist texts, publish stuff from Daniel Baryon, and, you know, that's great, because then I can go on and publish more books, and more people can learn about anarchism and libertarian socialism, and we can get more people to become revolutionaries. So, think that is about it. I appreciate everybody joining me today, and I'll see y'all next time.